6, it's the same. Instead of a prefix, instead of a /0, we add also the same for the IP version. 6 uses prefix this one for the network. And remember that the routing data is okay. /00 prefix indicate that none of to match. It also use the same. It also use the same here. Okay. None of the bits as exactly as the same as the previous one. Here instead of /0/0 you use the columns. That's it. Okay. You see? And via the address. So to define the default static route. Now configure floating static route. What does it mean, floating static route? So in this lecture, we know now how to configure default static route. For the IP version 4, it's 000,000 for the subnet mask and the IP address of the next hop. For the IP version 6, we use colon 2.2./0 and we add the next hop IP address. Now how to configure floating static route. What's a floating means? Okay, another type of static route is a floating static route. Floating static routes are static routes, they are static, that are used to provide a backup path to primary static or dynamic route. So they serve as backup. The floating static route is only used when the primary route is not available. So when the primary static or dynamic route are not available, the router will use something called floating static route. To accomplish this, to configure this floating static route, is configured with a higher administrative distance than the primary route. Remember, if we use AD, the administrative distance, with large number, it means that this route is not preferable. يعني منه محبب نستخدمه. كل ما نزيد, as much as we increase the administrative distance value, it means that the router should avoid this route. So the administrative route represents the trustworthiness of a route. If multiple paths to the destination exist, the router will choose the path with the lowest administrative distance. This is normal. By default, static routes have static routes has administrative distance of 1, making them preferable to routes learned from dynamic routing protocols. Let's check. You see, this is value 1. That's correct. This is the value 1. That's correct. This is the administrative one. You see, this is because they are static. Okay. Okay, making them, the administrative distance of a static route can be increased to make the route less desirable than that of another static route or a route learned through a dynamic routing protocol. In this way, the static route floats and is not used when the route with better administrative distance is active. So for the float static routes, we should increase their value to not use them, to not make the router choose them to use. We only use them when there is no available route. We use them. Okay? Here it's clear. It's only used when the primary route is not available. So they serve as a backup. If there is something disconnected or is down, we use the floating static routes. So in order to configure IP version 4.6 static floating static routes, we use the same thing as previous IP route 0000. We add the next hop. Here for the normal static, but here for the floating. Why? Because we added the value 5, the administrative distance 5. Here it's by default 1, and here 1, and this is 5. So whenever this route is active, the router would always check this or choose this because its AD here is 1 by default. If this line or this path goes off, it will use this one as a backup. Okay? So the floating static route is exactly as static route except that it adds the number of administrative the administrative distance value here 5. It's the same. If you go to the static route, you will see the same here. Look. IP route 40017. You see everything the same except that you add here for the floating 5. And if you check the administrative static route for this one here, check. Look, it's 5. Sorry, it's here for this one, it's 1. You see, and for the static routes, IP version 6, so not 00, we put 2 :/0, and we put the destination next hop IP version 6, and then you put the value of administrative distance. So here, as you are defining, this is the main path, but this is the backup path if this is not available. And this is also the same. Use this primary path. If it's not available, use this second one. Because we want the router always to choose this or always to choose this, we make the value here 5 and here by default 1. So if it's 1, it should use always this route if it's available. Test the floating static route. What would happen if R2? Now here we have configured them as we are configured them. And remember, we are configuring floating static routes. What happened if R2 is failed? R2 is failed. What happened? R2, to simulate this, R2 shuts down both of its serial interfaces. But R1 automatically generates syslog messages for link going down, A look at R1's routing table would show the secondary route being used. The default, this is the default static route. It will use this one and this one at version 6. That we have configured already, right? So it means that he's trying to say to you in this slide, if I am using this and this router has been down, it will use the default static route. That's it. And you see the value becomes 5. It means that it becomes the second address. Okay. In this lecture we learned to configure static routes, default static routes, and floating static routes. Thank you for your attention.